Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. It's a mailbag Wednesday. How does the wide receiver room shape up next year for the Vikings? That and some Jaren Hall talk on today's Minnesota football party.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota football party. It's your guys hanging out talking next-level Vikings football. So join in with Pro Football Network's Arif Hassan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talk's Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota football party. And it starts now.
I love the Wednesday mailbag show. Welcome to the Minnesota football party. Today, I'm Sam Ekstrom covering the Vikings here for Locked On Sports Minnesota. And I'm joined by Reggie Wilson, Kare 11 sports director and anchor at Reggie Wilson TV, and Luke Inman, our draft guru at Luke_Spinman. We're still coming off the NFL draft. Plenty on that in today's mailbag show. We take your questions and get into some controversial Minnesota Vikings topics. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's America's #1 sportsbook, and you can make every moment more at FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. You can also find Locked On Sports Minnesota for free on YouTube. Subscribe there, or free and available wherever you get your podcasts, Amazon Fire Stick and Roku devices. You can find the Locked On Sports Minnesota app there as well. Myriad ways to watch and listen here at Locked On Sports Minnesota. Reggie, Luke, let's dive right into it. The Vikings had their draft over the weekend, 6 new players, and plenty of talkers emerging now that we really have the Vikings roster in focus. I believe they have 88 players on their roster after the draft and UDFAs, so you got almost your full 90. You can start projecting out these depth charts. Question from Katie about whether Jalen Reagor is costing the Vikings a 4th-round pick or a 5th-round pick next year. Katie, I believe it's a 5th-round pick because Jalen is almost certainly not going to meet the statistical benchmarks required. But let's talk about Jalen Reagor's spot in this wide receiver room in general. Reggie, how do you stack up the depth chart now that you've got Addison in the mix, you got some UDFAs in the mix, and obviously Osborne and Jefferson? Where's Reagor fit into that bigger picture?
I think he kind of fits in just kind of like he did last year. You know, it's interesting because he's still kind of like that speed guy who you can do some gadget things with, who you could, hey, go in there and run a go route and get open. He can do those type of things. And I think, he didn't do a whole lot of that last year. What was it? It was only like 8 catches for 100 and something yards and a touchdown. And he had the touchdown that he had on the handoff in the game against the Bears. And so I think it's interesting because, they gave up Amir Smith-Marset. They got him to basically be the team's punt returner, but, at the number that it would cost for, a 1st-round pick, they decided to decline the 5th-year option and just kind of let him play this thing out this year. I don't see him being that much more involved. I think, you got Nailor. He's going to be in his 2nd year. Maybe he kind of takes another step. You kind of saw how Osborne kind of developed in his 2nd season with the Vikings. And now, he's going to be fighting for that wide receiver 2 spot with Addison. So those 3 guys are Osborne, Addison, Jefferson. Those guys are firmly there at the top 3 spots. And then you got guys like Nailor, you got guys like Reagor. They're probably fighting for the depth after that point. But he's going to be solid as a punt returner again, and hopefully he does some dynamic things there. But I don't know how much he's going to be involved heavily with this offense.
Inman, I would consider Reagor a bubble guy, particularly if someone like your favorite, Malik Knowles, who, by the way, I'm all in on. You've convinced me. Malik Knowles is my UDFA favorite. I think that Reagor could be on the outskirts of this roster very quickly.
Oh, and don't forget about Brandon Powell, too, guys. Remember, another punt returner brought in to bring up a little bit more punt return and special teams competition. We talk about, every draft class this happens. You install those guys, these new young faces, some fresh legs into the depth chart. All of a sudden, the guys that maybe solid foundational background pieces last year, like Kare, all of a sudden, will Kare's job be on the line? They draft another running back in Dwayne McBride. We still don't know the status of Dalvin Cook in 2023 either. So, yeah, there's a lot of guys that had some bright future heading into last year's training camp. Didn't really do much for whatever reason. Everybody's got their different scenario in case why that happened. But now all of a sudden you bring in some more stiff competition like Brandon Powell, like Malik Knowles, and all of a sudden Reagor not only needs to stand out as that wide receiver 4 next to Jalen Nailor behind Osborne, Addison, and JJ, but he's got to make some noise come training camp in August on special teams and punt return as well, which I think most people would agree he didn't really wow anybody in that category. And, you say, all right, if you're going to give up a 5th-round pick for this guy, former 1st-round pick, obviously picked 1 pick before JJ, by the way, a lot of high expectations in Philly, doesn't pan out, comes over. You think, all right, sometimes guys just need a fresh start. They just need to hit the reset button. Doesn't really do much as a receiver. You're thinking, all right, well, he's at least going to give you a little spark in the punt return game. Kind of underwhelming in that department as well. So I would agree with you, Sam. A lot of more stiff competition coming in for both these return men, both Kare and Jalen Reagor as well.
Now that Addison is on the Vikings, guys, number 23 overall pick, obviously a very exciting player. Now that that is the reality, would you rather have this reality of a rookie receiver who obviously there's a risk involved? He's a rookie. You don't know if he's going to be elite. Would you rather have that, or would you rather have kept Thielen at a reduced contract, paid him, who knows, $10 million, and then had that for this season instead of Addison? Now that that's sort of the reality, you have Addison. To me, it feels like the obvious choice. This is the better of the two options, as much as you like Thielen. But Reggie, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it was an opportunity to get younger. The guy's only, 21 years old. And projecting, he should have a higher ceiling than what Adam Thielen was going to give you at this point in his career. He's going to work with Keenan McCardell. The dude is like the wide receiver whisperer at this point. And I think there's no shortage of confidence in him. We saw that on draft night. We saw that, when he came to Minnesota finally on that next day. And the dude is very confident in his abilities. He's kind of, I wouldn't say a throwback, but, some of these receivers these days are a little bit more humble than, your guys like Terrell Owens and Randy Moss and, some of these guys that are just, all about them. But he's kind of a throwback. I mean, his first words, his post-draft interview was, "Let's get paid.
Yeah.
we're gonna score. We're gonna score all night." Like, who is this dude? Like, come on, give me some more of that. Like you just you hope that he backs that up on the field with his play. And I think he's in a position where he can, in a system that is very wide receiver friendly. It does require a lot out of his wide receivers, but if he can catch on, you've kind of seen, like, over the last 5-6 years, especially, like, these wide receivers, they're getting taken and they're making an impact right away. You kind of right away can tell if those guys, you brought up Jalen Reagor, right away you could kind of tell, like, oh man, like, I don't know about this guy. But it seems like that first year, these wide receivers are kind of showing who they are and who they could be. And I think that's what you're going to see from Addison. And I think, God love Thielen. The dude just catches touchdowns and very productive wide receiver. But when you look at the number, the cap number, that's going to be different from what Thielen was making and what Addison is going to be making. And the upside with the age, a decade plus younger, I think you have to feel good about moving forward with Addison this season.
Yeah, to your point, Reggie, there's been 7 rookie wide receivers with 1,000-yard seasons in the past 4 NFL seasons. Luke Inman, Thielen at his current age, or rookie Addison. Is there any doubt in your mind about what the better of those 2 scenarios is?
I mean, no, Reggie hit so many of the positives that there are. You get to reset that contract too. And I think, hey, you turn the salary cap off like we're playing Madden or something. All of a sudden, yeah, of course I'm going to keep Thielen. But that was such a big cap hit. And for the production that he gave you as wide receiver 2, it just didn't really match what kind of, I guess, hole that Rick Spielman even kind of dug Kwesi into. And he was forced to make some obviously tough decisions this offseason. So many big names, some key vets that have been around for so long, obviously, that some fan favorites had to go. My question would be, if you did keep Thielen, you didn't draft Addison, what did you do with your first-round pick? Did you draft a cornerback? Did you draft a quarterback? Obviously, that plays into the equation a little bit. But I think, too, you know, my old-school defensive mind says, start in the trenches on the defensive side of the ball. Or if nothing else, maybe go grab one of these cornerbacks in such a deep-loaded class in the first round, like Deonte Banks or Joey Porter Jr. But I may be in the wrong there. I'll call myself out. This is a new pass-happy league, guys. And to your point, Sam, so many of these young receivers, it used to be, I mean, a given that you shouldn't expect anything from these receivers coming out as rookies, even first-round picks for 2, even 3 years sometimes. It's just such a huge adjustment from the college to the program, specifically at that position. That's not the case anymore. I mean, these guys are having instant impacts right away in these offenses, and maybe it has something to do with a little bit of the rule changes for sure that favors the offense, but I just think NFL passing games, these NFL quarterbacks, even guys like Kirk Cousins, yes, has gotten so good at their game and their craft. And now when you get such a polished, unique route runner in that sense as a rookie, I think is going to be able to come in and have a huge instant impact. If nothing else, being able to be the number 2, knowing that JJ is constantly every play going to command double, if not even triple coverage. So I think it's the perfect landing spot for Addison. I think not only does JJ and Addison win, but I think a guy like KJ Osborne gets to slide back into his more natural wide receiver 3 position. And don't forget TJ Hawkinson, arguably still the passing threat number 2, maybe number 3, right? 2-2A with Addison now. So this is a lethal passing attack now the Vikings have built under just 2 years with Kwesi. And again, I think it fits the theme, what the NFL is really kind of switch gears to, as opposed to 20, 30, 40 years ago when our dads were watching, when it was all about the defense.
Your point,
go ahead, Reggie.
Luke. How crazy was it from what we saw, even in that stretch of the first round? You had the Chargers taking my draft crush, Quentin Johnston, who I saw Steve Smith kind of ripped up a little bit, but I think it was motivation for Quentin Johnston because he tweeted back at Steve Smith with the 100 emojis or whatever. But he's just saying, like, who is this guy gonna be? And I think that's I think that's the guy that you do wonder, like, what his ceiling is going to be. But you kind of look at these teams. The Chargers drafted Quentin Johnston. You're like, why did they do that? They already have Mike Williams. They already have Keenan Allen. And their receiving core is strong, and now they add this other threat. You look at the Seahawks drafting Jackson Smith and Jigba. That was a steal, I feel like.
Absolute steal.
But they 100%. Already have DK and Tyler Lockett. So, like, you got all these teams that it seems like, you know, you look at the Bengals, they have Burrow with T. Higgins and Chase and
Tyler Boyd.
Yeah, Tyler Boyd. I don't know why I was
loaded.
Marvin
just
Boyd.
Loaded.
You got all these teams that are loaded at the receiver position, and now you look at a team like the Vikings and what they add with Jordan Addison, with already Hawk and Osborne and JJ. I think the Vikings are kind of trending towards what today's NFL is going to be when the Rams won that Super Bowl. You know, you had OBJ and Cooper Kupp and Van Jefferson and, you know, all these weapons. So to your point, Luke, it seems like that's where the NFL is trending towards, and the Vikings are just getting in on it.
Yeah, and real quick to that, too, as we wrap this one up, I think Daniel Jeremiah maybe mentioned it on draft night round 1. Hey, everybody's chasing the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, and unless you got an elite quarterback, you don't have a shot. But the point was, it's a who's got the ball last kind of league now. It's a run them up, shoot them out kind of league. The other thing was, a lot of people said this wasn't the loaded wide receiver class we've seen in years past. And despite that, teams like the Lions, right, with Jamar Gibbs at 12, the Falcons with Bijan Robinson at 8, said, all right, even though it's not a loaded receiver class, we still have to find offensive playmakers in this new league now to keep up with teams like the Chiefs and offenses like that. So what's the next best thing? Maybe a playmaker, home run hitter at running back like Bijan or Jamar Gibbs, who can also be obviously huge threats in the passing game as well. So it was interesting just to see how it kind of all unfolded. But I'm with you, man. If there was any pick that kind of stood out to me, Jackson Smith to Seattle, whew, they crushed that draft.
Is there going to be a video released by the Vikings in about 2 years, like the one with Reagor and Jefferson, where Addison falls in their lap and they're all, oh, yeah, we got him? We'll see. We'll see. Is Zay Flowers the next Jalen Reagor?
We'll see.
We'll find out. We'll find out. We open up Pandora's box of the Jaren Hall debates. They've already begun. Jaren Hall is already a controversial figure. We get into that after I remind you that Built Bar is a delicious snack without all the sugar and all the calories. It's the best tasting protein bar ever. You got to try these 100% real dark chocolate, delicious flavors, peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream, brownie batter puffs, just to name a few. They are innumerable, these delicious Built Bar flavors. Really good for you collagen protein, 4 grams of sugar, 17 grams of protein, and accessible at your nearest Walmart or Sam's Club. Go to the pharmacy section, get the 4-bar box, the 13-bar box, and load up on some Built Bars today. Or you can always head to Built.com and order online. Built Bars, the best tasting protein bar on the globe. Yesterday, Ron Johnson did a 180. He was initially cold on the Jaren Hall pick. Now he has turned a corner. He has seen the light. He is a Jaren Hall truther. He's a big fan now. And I'm a big fan. I think Luke's a big fan. I don't know. We'll have to get your take, Reggie, on just overall Jaren Hall. But the debate has already begun raging in the comment section. Some people saying he's too small. Some people saying, no, he's like 1 inch shorter than Jalen Hurts. And it's going back and forth, and people are very upset at each other. So Reggie, I go to you first. Kind of overall vibe on Jaren Hall, and is his size, which I think is officially 6 feet, 200, is that an issue for you?
I guess I would just want to know what the expectations are. You know, you don't draft this guy to be like the next starter. I don't think. Like I think you draft him for some depth, maybe someone you can develop. You know, moving forward, he could be a backup. I don't know if that's like, are people like thinking that he's going to be a replacement for Kirk Cousins? Is that what the vibe is?
I think people's minds like to go that way because he's kind of the shiny new object. I do think that there is a world where he could play himself into that conversation in 2024, but it would require maybe like a Kirk injury and for us to see Jaren Hall in the regular season. Like, I do think it's a long shot that he would be given the team without having any real regular season games.
No, I don't know that that's going to happen. I was reading his overview from one of the draft guys. An undersized pocket quarterback with unimpressive arm strength. Those are the first parts of the sentence that I'm reading on this guy.
Oh, no.
So what are you trying to say here, Reg?
Hall's field command gives him a shot to make it at the next level. He throws an excellent ball placement to targets on the move and delivers a feathery, soft, deep ball with accuracy. But his lack of drive velocity creates smaller margins for error, and his timing needs to be impeccable to beat NFL man coverage. What that says to me is he's a good like prospect, a good like developmental quarterback that you can, you know, put in the system and you know, see what he can do. But he kind of sounds like Mannion 2.0,
from
what they're saying in this.
No.
His NFL comparison is Gardner Minshew. He has some athleticism to maybe make some plays with his legs, and then he's been injured as well. I'm not trying to dump on the guy because he's just a rookie, but just reading kind of like the scouting report, reading some of the tea leaves, I think, I don't know that this is a guy that you're just like, oh yeah, he's gonna be, the next dude. I just think he's gonna be a guy that they have in the quarterback room, a guy they can develop, who has some upside to be better than he's coming in there as. And if he can stay healthy, he can put himself in the mix of being a guy who could compete for maybe a backup role.
Yeah, and I think too, it's important to note they have drafted probably this year's backup, maybe. I think he could definitely beat out Nick Mullins. And while Kirk Cousins is unlikely to get hurt, the next quarterback might. Your 2024 quarterback, whoever that may be, draft pick, free agent, trade situation, whoever it is, they might get hurt. They might not be as durable as Kirk Cousins. They might be injury prone, and that's where you need a backup like a Jaren Hall with some of that mobility that could kind of go into a game and light the place up. Luke Inman, your thoughts?
14 quarterbacks, guys, were drafted this year in the 2023 NFL draft. 12 of them were drafted in the first 5 rounds. That set a new NFL record. Point is, if you didn't draft a quarterback and get in on the party, you weren't sitting at the cool kids table. Everybody's trying to find the next Brock Purdy, as unfair and unrealistic as they might sound. But I think Jaren Hall, he's a 5th-round quarterback. Like Reggie said, he's far from perfect. Even the top quarterbacks in this year's draft were far from perfect. Even Bryce Young, the #1 overall pick, you can pick at his game. But Jaren Hall, for a 5th-round guy, I think the expectations need to be, can this guy develop? First of all, get into camp and win the #2 spot with Nick Mullins. And then next year, if nothing else, worst case, you have a bridge, an emergency option. If Kirk Cousins doesn't return, you don't retain his contract and bring him back, and you want to draft a rookie early on in the first round, something like that. Now you got a guy who at least can be a bridge. He can get some ultra valuable playing time too, by the way, and maybe you can see what you got in him, but he's a 5th-round pick. Reggie's right. Far from perfect. I am excited, though, of all the 5th, 6th, 7th-round quarterbacks. He intrigued me the most. Yes, on the smaller side, but 207, 207 pounds. You talk to some BYU fans, the injuries are a concern. Missed 5 games in 2019 with concussion, missed a couple more games, I want to say in 2021 with a rib injury. But I also think there's this unrealistic or unfair comparison to Zach Wilson, because Zach Wilson didn't pan out, and he was the last quarterback to come from BYU and have a lot of hype. This is a completely different story. You got to give him a fresh start and a clean slate. 51-11 touchdown to interception ratio. That's phenomenal. I think what Vikings fans are going to be most excited about just watching this guy run around in training camp is the mobility. I mean, love Kirk Cousins to death for what he does. One of the most efficient, accurate quarterbacks in the league, but a pure pocket guy. Nobody's going to argue that. In the new day and age now, I just think so many of these quarterbacks, it's almost a necessity now to be able to escape with your legs and create on the move outside of the pocket. So he offers you that 700 rushing yards in his last 2 seasons. So yeah, it's a 5th-round pick. Reggie's right. It's a 5th-round pick. Temper expectations, pump the brakes, but let's just baby step this thing and keep this last little nugget in the back of your mind. What was the #1 reason they hired Kevin O'Connell in the first place for? It's to develop and find quarterbacks. That was his thing, right? Okay. That was his thing. So not the first-round guy we expected, like a Will Levis or Hendon Hooker, but you get a 5th-round developmental guy. It's not Kellen Mond, who, again, was drafted by the Rick Spielman regime. It's his own guy, handpicked. Remember, all the outlets and media said, nobody did more homework on this quarterback class than the Minnesota Vikings. You knew they'd draft one eventually. It's just not maybe the round or the guy that we thought they would. But Jaren Hall gives you enough to get excited for a 5th-round guy and potential bridge next year after Kirk Cousins.
You can get insight like that if you subscribe to NFL Draft Buzz. That's Luke Inman's draft newsletter. He's got post-draft reaction. Subscribe at lockedonpodcast.com/newsletters. Draft intel straight to your inbox. Check that out. I saw on ESPN on the ticker that the NFL schedule release is May 11th, just about a week away. Last year, guys, the Vikings had a very favorable schedule. Like, it came out, and I think a lot of us thought it was gettable because they had 9 home games. They had just 7 road games and 1 neutral game in London. This year, it's going to flip. This year, they're going to be heavy on road games and against some pretty good opponents. I've asked you both to bring up the schedule. Looking at the potential opponents for 2023, what do you think? What do you think about the gamut that the Vikings have to navigate next year with the AFC West and the NFC South as their primary divisions they're facing?
Right out the gate, remember, when you win the division, you're going to be playing other division winners the next year. So you've got teams like the Eagles, the Bucks, there's a couple other teams, but you're talking about the AFC West. Is there a better, more scary division out there than the AFC West? You get the Chiefs and Chargers at home. If nothing else, going to be super exciting just to get Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert at the bank in the building. You get the Niners at home, 1 game away from the Super Bowl. They're going to be coming back with a vengeance as well. And then this may be a small factor, but it just kind of it bums me out a little bit. Last year, remember, it was 17 games. Every other year, you get 1 more home game or 1 more away game. Last year, they got the extra home game. This year, they got the extra away game. So it's just going to be a tough schedule, man, between all those different factors, plus losing all these core veterans and key pieces like Thielen, Kendricks, Dalvin Tomlinson. I hate to say it, I'm tempering expectations because when I look at this schedule top to bottom, we'll see the order next week, or I think Adam Schefter said May 11th, May 12th, something like that. We'll see the actual order and how it all plays out, but just seeing the opponents, both home and away, they're in for a tough time in 2023, guys. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong.
NFC South, that's probably the worst division in football, at least on paper right now. That could change, but I think you feel good about a lot of those games. AFC West is formidable, but Denver, I don't know about Denver. Raiders, I don't know about the Raiders. Like, I think I liked them more going into last year than I do this year. Reggie, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm just looking at these possible road trips that we're
Vegas.
Next year.
Vegas. Is Kare 11 going to send Reggie and Julia and Will to Vegas?
They'll send one of us. So yeah, looking forward to this Denver
You've got
road
tenure.
trip.
Make sure they know that.
Yeah, looking forward to this Vegas road trip. What I think is interesting on these road trips, though, the NFC South is very interesting because you have 2 teams that you'll be on the road, but facing quarterbacks who are largely unproven. You got the Falcons with Desmond Ridder. I covered Dez in college. I think the world of him. I'm hoping for the best for him because people in Atlanta are already trying to poo-poo on him after just a very small sample size last year. And then you got the house that Adam Thielen built. You're going to Carolina, playing him and Bryce Young. And so I think Bryce, I love Bryce. I think he's going to be a gamer. I think it's going to be interesting when they do see the Panthers because as Bryce kind of gets a little bit more comfortable, I do think that he's going to get better and better. And so it's going to be interesting. But those are 2 teams, you're going to face Bijan Robinson. You're going to face Bryce Young and Adam Thielen. Like, those are 2 teams that will be interesting. The Raiders, I've never believed in Josh McDaniels. Like, I still am scarred with how bad the offense was when he was the offensive coordinator for the St. Louis Rams. And then he left and ended up going to the Patriots when they were in the Super Bowl. So he ended up getting a Super Bowl ring with those guys after a just abysmal season as coordinator. I don't like how he just kind of like jilted the Colts. And I just don't like the guy. I don't know. I'm not a fan. So I'm not really sure what to think about the Raiders. They got Jimmy G, could be fine. The Broncos, I think the Broncos is going to be a tough game because I believe in Sean Payton. And I don't know what Russ is going to be this year. He just seems to have regressed each and every year as his career has kind of gotten a little longer in the tooth. Like, I think he's only like 33 years old. He's not like old for quarterback standards, but he's just not the same guy. That game against the Bengals is going to be tough. I mean, you're going and playing Joe Burrow. That last game against the Bengals was fun, right? So it's interesting. I think a lot of people are thinking that the Lions are going to be so much more improved and maybe they might be the favorites to win the division. I'm just not sold on them.
And going to be interesting, too, with Jameson Williams on the 6-game suspension. Yeah. Do you catch the Lions? Do you catch Detroit? One of those 2 games in those first 6 weeks, that'll be interesting. Obviously, one guy doesn't make the world of difference. But, it's the little things, and the little things matter. But I just think at the end of the day, and so much can change in the NFL. This is why it's so fun, the parity. Teams can go from worst to first in a heartbeat with one good offseason and one good draft. You saw that with Seattle last year. But just based off last season, you play the top 2 teams in the NFC, Philly and the Niners. You also play the Bucs, who is the 4th best team in the NFC. Granted, I'll give you a pass there because Tom Brady's gone. The AFC, though, you play the Chiefs, Super Bowl champs. You play the Bengals, 3rd seed in the AFC last year, and the Chargers, the 5th seed in the AFC. And we all can agree the AFC, just top to bottom strength-wise, is a lot stronger than the NFC. So 3 of those top 5 teams in the AFC, plus the top 2 teams in the NFC, I'm just saying, plus the NFC North, I think, has gotten a little bit better as well. No easy games in the NFL. I do agree with you guys, though. The Raiders, maybe the Broncos, Falcons for sure as well, Panthers with the rookie quarterback. There is some maybe more favorable matchups on there for sure. Fun fact, by the way, last time Vikings played at the Raiders on the road, that was at the Coliseum 2015. Teddy Bridgewater hooking up with Brett Ellison. And they went on to win 30-14.
Big game for Adrian. Adrian had like an 80-yard run.
93-yard kickoff return. AP had an 80-yard rush in the 4th quarter to seal the deal, 30-14. So keep those vibes going, guys.
So what home games are you guys like looking forward to the most? I think for sure for me, it's the Chiefs. I've never seen Patty Mahomes play in person before.
Chiefs Chargers.
Kind of looking forward to that. Yeah.
It's all this league's all about the quarterback. Give me Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert up close and personal for sure.
Chiefs are going to paint exciting. US Bank Stadium red. I mean, they're going to travel like crazy. And just as the Vikings, and to the Vikings' credit, they painted Arrowhead purple. I mean, you were at that game, Luke. I was at that game.
Yeah.
And Patty Mahomes didn't play, and the Vikings still lost. So this is the first time the Vikings will face Patrick Mahomes. The full schedule released on the 11th, so I imagine on Friday the 12th, Roundtable show, we're going to have a pretty good schedule breakdown with Reggie, Ron, Luke, and myself. That's our mailbag show for today. Make sure to subscribe and comment below. What is your favorite game on the upcoming Vikings schedule? He's Reggie Wilson, Kare 11, at Reggie Wilson TV. Luke Inman, NFL Draft Buzz author, at Luke_Spinman on Twitter. I'm Sam Ekstrom, at Sam Ekstrom on Twitter. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll talk to you tomorrow with Arif Hassan and Luke Braun on the Minnesota Football Party.